I'd learned to tune out Marcus's voice years ago. It was a survival skill, really, like learning to sleep through a neighbor's barking dog. Tonight, at his ridiculously expensive wedding reception, I was getting plenty of practice. "Sarah's great with kids, terrible with numbers," he announced to a cluster of his Goldman Sachs colleagues near the bar. His voice carried across the ballroom with that particular confidence that comes from 3 whiskeys and a captive audience. Always has been. Creative type, you know? Can't balance a checkbook to save her life. I sipped my champagne and adjusted the strap on my bridesmaid dress. The unflattering coral one his fiancée Emma had chosen specifically because it washed me out. Small victories for her, I supposed. Marcus had always been the golden child. Wharton MBA at 26. Vice president at 29. Now, at 33, he was marrying Emma Whitmore, whose father sat on half the boards in Manhattan. The wedding cost more than most people's houses, $400,000, according to Emma's loud complaints about keeping it intimate. I was 31, living in a modest apartment in Brooklyn, working as a freelance graphic designer. At least that's what the family believed. That's what I let them believe. "Remember when she tried to start that little Etsy shop?" my mother was saying to Emma's mother near the head table. Lost money on shipping costs for months before Marcus had to explain basic business to her. Bless her heart, but she's just not wired for finance. Emma's mother made a sympathetic noise. Well, not everyone can be a Marcus. The thing about being underestimated your entire life is that you learn to move quietly. While Marcus was building his career at Goldman Sachs, networking loudly and visibly, I was doing something else entirely. 10 years ago, after my graphic design degree, I'd started investing. Small amounts at first, $500 here, $1,000 there. I had a knack for spotting undervalued companies, particularly in the tech sector. Within 3 years, my portfolio had grown to $2 million. By year 5, $15 million. By year 8, $94 million. I kept it quiet. Invested through a family trust I'd set up under my grandmother's maiden name, Blackwell Capital Management. My family had never connected the dots. Why would they? I was creative Sarah, the artsy one. The one who needed Marcus to explain compound interest at Thanksgiving dinner while everyone nodded sympathetically. 6 months ago, Marcus had started his own venture capital firm, Hartley Investment Group. He'd raised $200 million from investors, including Emma's father and several of his Goldman colleagues. The firm was his pride and joy, his chance to step out of the corporate hierarchy and build something of his own. What Marcus didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Blackwell Capital Management owned 81% of Hartley Investment Group's voting shares. I'd invested $162 million through a series of shell companies and trust structures. Marcus thought his funding came from a consortium of European investors and a few anonymous American family offices. He had no idea that his baby sister, the financial idiot, controlled his entire company. "Sarah." Emma's voice cut through my thoughts. She was gesturing me over to the head table, her smile tight. "We need you for photos with the bridesmaids." I set down my champagne and made my way over, passing Marcus, who was now holding court with Emma's father and several board members from various companies. "The key to successful venture capital," Marcus was explaining with the authority of someone 6 months into the industry, "is knowing when to trust your instincts over the data. Sometimes you have to make bold moves." Emma's father nodded approvingly. "That's the Marcus I know. Confident. Decisive. Unlike some people," Marcus added with a laugh, glancing in my direction. "Sarah once asked me if stocks and bonds were the same thing. Can you imagine?" The group erupted in polite laughter. I smiled and kept walking. The photographer arranged us on the grand staircase. Emma in the center, her 5 bridesmaids flanking her like pastel-colored sentries. I was positioned on the far end, partially hidden behind a marble column. Even in photos I was an afterthought. "Sarah, try to smile naturally," the photographer called. "You look like you're at a funeral." More laughter from the family members watching. After photos, I retreated to a quiet corner near the terrace doors. The reception was in full swing. A live band playing jazz standards, guests dancing on the marble floor, champagne flowing like water. Everything Marcus touched turned to gold, or so the family narrative went. My phone buzzed. A text from my actual business partner, Jennifer Chin, a mergers and acquisitions attorney I'd met 5 years ago. "Jennifer, Board meeting moved to Monday 10 a.m. Chairman confirmed attendance. All documentation ready. I typed back. Perfect. Thank you. Marcus's company had been hemorrhaging money for 3 months. His bold moves and instincts over data approach had resulted in 7 failed investments totaling $47 million in losses. The board, the Real board, the one I'd carefully assembled through Blackwell Capital, had been growing increasingly concerned. As majority shareholder, I'd been receiving detailed reports. Marcus was making decisions without proper due diligence, chasing flashy tech startups with charismatic founders and no viable business models. He was treating the firm like his personal playground, convinced his Goldman pedigree made him infallible. Last week he'd proposed investing $30 million in a cryptocurrency mining operation run by a 24-year-old dropout with a fake Stanford degree. The board had voted it down 6-1. Marcus had been furious, sending angry emails about old guard thinking and risk aversion killing innovation. He had no idea who actually controlled those votes. There's my little sister. Marcus appeared beside me, slightly unsteady on his feet. He'd loosened his tie, his face flushed from alcohol and attention. Why are you hiding in the corner? This is a party. Just taking a breather, I said. Beautiful wedding, Marcus. Congratulations. Yeah, Emma really outdid herself with the planning. He looked out at the crowd with satisfaction. This is just the beginning, you know. Hartley Investment Group is about to make some major moves. I'm in talks with 3 major pension funds right now. Could be looking at $500 million in additional capital by Q2. That's great, I said neutrally. You should let me manage some money for you, he continued, swirling his whiskey. I know you don't have much, but even a few thousand properly invested could grow significantly. I could teach you the basics. God knows you need the help. I appreciate the offer. I'm serious, Sarah. You can't just live hand-to-mouth your whole life doing little art projects. You need to think about retirement, building wealth. It's not too late to learn, even if finance doesn't come naturally to you. A waiter passed with a tray of champagne. Marcus grabbed 2 glasses, handing me one. To family, he said, raising his glass. And to finally understanding how the real world works. I clinked my glass against his. To understanding, I agreed. My phone buzzed again. This time a call. I glanced at the screen. Richard Blackwell, board chairman. Richard Blackwell wasn't actually related to me. He was a former J.P. Morgan executive I'd recruited to chair the Hartley Investment Group board. The surname was convenient for maintaining my cover. He only called when something required immediate attention. Excuse me, I need to take this, I said. Marcus waved me off, already turning back toward his guests. I stepped onto the terrace, the cool October air a relief after the stuffy ballroom. Richard. Miss Hartley. His voice was grave. I apologize for calling during your brother's wedding, but we have a situation. Marcus just sent an email to all investors announcing he's moving forward with the cryptocurrency mining investment. He's claiming board approval and says the deal closes Monday morning, $30 million wire transfer. My stomach tightened. He's lying about the board approval. I'm aware. I've already received calls from 3 concerned board members. This constitutes fraud, Ms. Hartley. He's misrepresenting board decisions to investors. If that money transfers, we're looking at potential criminal liability for the entire firm. I watched through the glass doors as Marcus laughed with Emma's father, completely oblivious. Has he been drinking tonight? Richard asked. Yes. That might explain the recklessness, but it doesn't excuse it. As majority shareholder, you need to make a decision. We can either remove him as CEO effective immediately, or we wait until Monday and risk him actually executing this fraudulent deal. Through the glass, I could see my mother showing wedding photos to relatives, Marcus the star of every image. My father stood with his arm around Marcus's shoulder, beaming with pride at his son, the financial genius. Schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning, I said quietly. 9 a.m. I'll be there in person. You're sure? That will reveal. I'm sure. Notify all board members and legal counsel. Marcus needs to be there too. He'll want to know who called the meeting. Tell him the truth. Tell him the majority shareholder called it. Let him spend tonight wondering who that is. Richard was quiet for a moment. I'll send the notifications within the hour. See you tomorrow, Miss Hartley. I ended the call and stood on the terrace, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. The city glittered like scattered diamonds, beautiful and indifferent. Back inside, the band was playing The Way You Look Tonight. Marcus was dancing with Emma, spinning her under his arm while guests applauded. He caught my eye and grinned, pointing at me with his free hand like I was in on the joke, like we were all celebrating his success together. I raised my champagne glass in response. My phone buzzed with Richard's email. Emergency board meeting. Sunday, October 15th, 9 a.m. Hartley Investment Group offices. Called by majority shareholder, Blackwell Capital Management. Required attendance. All board members, CO Marcus Hartley, legal counsel. I watched as Marcus's phone buzzed in his jacket pocket. He ignored it, lost in the moment with his new wife. It buzzed again. And again. Finally, he pulled it out, his smile fading as he read the screen. He stopped dancing, causing Emma to stumble slightly. She said something to him, concerned, but he wasn't listening. He was staring at his phone like it had just betrayed him. He looked around the ballroom wildly, then his eyes found me on the terrace. Even through the glass, I could see the confusion on his face. Who the hell is Blackwell Capital? He mouthed. I simply smiled and raised my glass again. Marcus extracted himself from Emma and strode toward the terrace doors, yanking them open. What the hell is this? He thrust his phone at me. Emergency board meeting? Tomorrow morning? During my honeymoon weekend? Who does Blackwell Capital think they are? I don't know, Marcus. What does the email say? It says they own 81% of voting shares. His voice was rising, drawing attention from nearby guests. That's impossible. I know every major investor in my firm. Maybe you don't know them as well as you think. This is ridiculous. I'm calling Richard right now. He started dialing, but I reached out and gently pushed his phone down. Marcus, it's your wedding night. Don't you think this can wait until tomorrow? Wait. Sir, this is my company. Some mysterious shareholder can't just call emergency meetings and demand my presence. He ran his hand through his hair, agitated. This is probably one of the European investors getting cold feet about the crypto deal. I'll straighten it out tomorrow, but this is totally unprofessional timing. Emma appeared at his elbow. Marcus, what's wrong? Everyone's asking why you stopped dancing. Work stuff, he muttered. Nothing I can't handle. On your wedding night? Emma's voice went cold. Seriously. It's just a meeting tomorrow morning. I'll deal with it quick and then we'll head to the Maldives as planned. You're supposed to be on our honeymoon. I know, babe, but this is important. Some investors throwing their weight around, probably trying to block my crypto deal. I just need to remind them who actually runs the company. I sipped my champagne, saying nothing. Marcus turned back to me. You don't know anything about Blackwell Capital, do you? They're not one of your artsy Brooklyn friends trying to invest or something. I barely have enough money for rent, remember? How would I know major investors? He nodded, satisfied with this logic. Right. Sorry. I'm just stressed. This is supposed to be the happiest day of my life and now I have to deal with board politics. Maybe they have legitimate concerns, I suggested carefully. About what? I've made 7 investments. So they haven't all paid off immediately. That's how venture capital works. You take risks, you learn, you adjust. But these old guard board members don't understand that you have to trust your instincts. Maybe instincts aren't enough. He laughed, the patronizing sound I'd heard my entire life. Sarah, no offense, but you don't really understand how high-level finance works. These are complex decisions that require years of experience and a sophisticated understanding of market dynamics. Of course, I said. What do I know about money? Exactly. He seemed relieved that I understood my place. Look, I love you, sis, but we live in different worlds. You do your art thing, I do the finance thing. That's just how we're wired. Emma tugged at his arm. Marcus, can we please get back to our wedding? Yeah, you're right. He pocketed his phone and smoothed his jacket. Tomorrow morning I'll sort this out, remind everyone who the CEO is, and then we'll be on a plane to paradise. Simple. They walked back into the ballroom, Marcus's arm around Emma's waist. Within minutes he was dancing again, laughing with guests, the picture of confidence. I stayed on the terrace until the reception ended, watching my brother celebrate his perfect life while his perfect company crumbled beneath his feet like sand. Sunday morning arrived cold and gray. I stood outside the Hartley Investment Group offices at 8:45 a.m., wearing a charcoal business suit I'd purchased specifically for this occasion. My leather portfolio contained detailed financial reports, legal documents, and 10 years of investment records. The office building was eerily quiet on a Sunday. Richard met me in the lobby. "Ms. Hartley." He extended his hand. "The other board members are already upstairs. Marcus arrived 10 minutes ago. He's agitated." "I imagine he is." We rode the elevator to the 23rd floor in silence. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see 6 board members seated around the table. Executives from various investment firms, all personally recruited by me through Blackwell Capital. All loyal to the majority shareholder, not to Marcus. Marcus stood at the head of the table, his back to the door. Even from behind I could see the tension in his shoulders. He was still in his honeymoon clothes, jeans and a polo shirt, clearly having come straight from his hotel. Richard opened the conference room door. Marcus spun around. "Finally." "Richard, what the hell is?" He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me behind Richard. "Sarah? What are you doing here?" "Miss Hartley is here at my invitation," Richard said calmly. "Your invitation?" "Richard, I appreciate that you're trying to include family, but this is a serious business meeting. Sarah doesn't understand." "Please, everyone sit," Richard interrupted, gesturing to the chairs. I took a seat at the opposite end of the table from Marcus. The board members watched with careful expressions, already briefed on what was about to unfold. Marcus remained standing. "Someone want to tell me what this is about?" "I got your email saying Blackwell Capital owns 81% of my company's voting shares." "That's impossible. I personally secured every major investor. I know exactly who has equity in this firm." "Do you?" I asked quietly. He looked at me irritated. "Sarah, I know you're trying to be supportive, but the adults need to talk business right now. Maybe Richard can call you an Uber." "Sit down, Marcus," Richard said, his tone brooking no argument. Something in Richard's voice made Marcus pause. He looked around the table at the board members, none of whom were meeting his eyes. Slowly he sank into his chair. "Marcus," Richard began, "what do you know about Blackwell Capital Management? They're a family office or consortium that invested $162 million in Hartley Investment Group during our series of funding. European-based, I thought. Anonymous investors who wanted passive involvement." "Incorrect," Richard said. Blackwell Capital Management is a private investment firm based in New York. It's been operating for 10 years, managing a portfolio currently valued at approximately $340 million. The principal investor and sole decision-maker is sitting at this table. Marcus's eyes darted around the room. "Which one of you?" "Me," I said. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus stared at me. Then he laughed, a short, disbelieving bark. "That's not funny, Sarah." "It's not a joke," I said. I opened my portfolio and slid a document across the table. "This is the corporate structure of Blackwell Capital Management. That's my signature as founder and principal. These are the incorporation documents from 10 years ago." Marcus picked up the papers, his hands shaking slightly. "This is, no, this is some kind of mistake. You don't have this kind of money. You're a freelance designer living in Brooklyn." "I'm a private investor who also does freelance design work," I corrected. "The design work is a hobby. The investing is my actual career." "That's impossible. Where would you get $340 million? I started with $500 10 years ago. Made some good investments in undervalued tech companies. Reinvested the returns. Compound growth over a decade." Richard slid another document across the table. "These are the investment records, Marcus. Every transaction, every return, every acquisition. All verified by our legal team." Marcus was flipping through papers frantically. "But, you asked me to explain stocks to you at Thanksgiving. You said you didn't understand compound interest." "I lied," I said simply. "I've been lying for 10 years. It was easier than dealing with the family's reaction." "So you've been secretly rich this entire time? While we all thought you were struggling." "While you all insisted I was struggling," I corrected. "I never said I was. You all just assumed." One of the board members, Patricia Chen from Sterling Ventures, cleared her throat. "Mr. Hartley, perhaps we should focus on the matter at hand. The cryptocurrency investment. Marcus's face went red. Don't tell me this is about that. The crypto mining operation is a solid opportunity. 24% projected annual returns. Run by a man with a fake Stanford degree, I said, sliding another document across the table. Our legal team did a background check. His name isn't even real. The entire operation is a Ponzi scheme. You were about to wire $30 million into a fraud operation. That's not. I vetted him. He had references. Fake references, Patricia said. From fake companies. If you'd done proper due diligence. I did do due diligence. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. I've been doing this for 20 years. I worked at Goldman Sachs. I know how to evaluate investments. You've been CEO of this firm for 6 months, Richard said quietly. And in that time, you've lost $47 million on 7 failed investments. The board voted against the cryptocurrency deal, but you sent an email to all investors last night claiming board approval. That's fraud, Marcus. The color drained from Marcus's face. I was going to get approval. I just needed to convince you all that. You lied to investors, I said. You misrepresented a board decision to close a deal you knew was rejected. That's securities fraud. If that wire transfer had gone through, you'd be facing criminal charges. Marcus looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You're behind this. You're trying to sabotage me. I'm trying to save the company. Your company. The one you're destroying with reckless decisions and ego-driven investments. Ego-driven. He laughed bitterly. This is rich coming from you. You've been sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars lying to the family, playing some kind of sick game. I wasn't playing a game. I was protecting my privacy and building a successful investment career while you all dismissed me as incompetent. We never dismissed you. Marcus. Kept my voice level. Yesterday at your wedding you told your guests I didn't know the first thing about money. You've spent 10 years explaining basic financial concepts to me like I'm a child. Mom tells people I tried to run a business but failed. Dad introduces me as the creative one, with a tone that makes it clear I'm the family disappointment. That's not, we were just being honest about what you believed, I finished. And I let you believe it because it was easier than explaining that I'd built an investment portfolio worth more than Dad's entire retirement fund by the time I was 26. Another board member, James Whitmore, yes, Emma's father, spoke up. Marcus, I think we need to address the immediate issue. Ms. Hartley, as majority shareholder, what action do you want to take? Marcus's head snapped toward James. Wait, you knew about this? You knew Sarah was the majority shareholder. I learned this morning, James said carefully. Along with everyone else. But you're on her side. You're all on her side. Marcus looked wildly around the table. This is a coup. You're trying to steal my company. It's not your company, I said quietly. It's my company. I own 81% of voting shares. You own 12%. The remaining 7% is distributed among smaller investors. I have controlling interest, Marcus. I always have. He stared at me, his chest rising and falling rapidly. So what, you're going to fire me? Take over as CEO? You don't know anything about running a venture capital firm. You're right, I agreed. Which is why I'm not taking over as CEO. Richard has agreed to step in as interim CEO while we conduct a national search for someone with actual experience in venture capital management. No. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. No, absolutely not. This is my firm. I built this. You pitched the idea, I corrected. I funded it. And you've been running it into the ground for 6 months. I won't accept this. I'll fight you. I'll sue for what? Patricia interrupted. Ms. Hartley is the majority shareholder exercising her legal rights. You signed operating agreements that explicitly allow for CEO replacement by majority vote. The board votes 7-0 in favor of your removal, effective immediately. Marcus looked at each board member in turn. None of them met his eyes. James, he said desperately, turning to his new father-in-law. You can't let this happen. We're family now. James shifted uncomfortably. Marcus, I'm a fiduciary board member. I have a legal obligation to act in the company's best interests, not personal interests. The The financial reports are concerning. The fraudulent investor communication is potentially criminal. I don't have a choice. So that's it. Marcus's voice cracked. After everything I've done, everything I've built, my own sister destroys it all? I'm not destroying anything, I said. I'm saving it. You're a smart guy, Marcus. But you're not ready to run a venture capital firm. You need more experience, more humility, more willingness to listen to people who know better than you. People like you, he spat. My little sister who lived in a dump in Brooklyn and couldn't figure out Etsy shipping costs? I never lived in a dump. I lived in a modest apartment because I was investing my money instead of spending it on appearances. And I deliberately lost money on Etsy shipping costs because it was easier to let you explain basic business to me than to reveal that I was managing a 9-figure investment portfolio. Richard stood. Marcus, you have 2 options. You can resign gracefully as CEO, maintain your equity position and transition to an advisory role. Or we can terminate you for cause based on the fraudulent investor communication, which would void your equity and potentially expose you to legal liability. Marcus's phone buzzed. He looked at it, his face going even paler. That's probably Emma wondering where you are, I said. You're supposed to be on a plane to the Maldives. How am I supposed to? He stopped, swallowing hard. How am I supposed to tell her I got fired from my own company? By my little sister. By the majority shareholder, I corrected. And you can tell her the truth, that you made mistakes, that the board took action to protect the company, and that you'll figure out your next steps. She's going to be devastated. Her father is on this board. James winced but said nothing. I'll give you until Tuesday to make your decision, I said, gathering my documents. Resign voluntarily or be terminated for cause. Those are your options. Marcus stood frozen, his hands gripping the edge of the table. You've been planning this. All along you've been waiting for me to fail. No, I said honestly. I was hoping you'd succeed. I invested $162 million in your firm because I believed in the concept. But you've proven you're not ready to run it. Maybe someday you will be. But not today. I stood and walked toward the door. Richard and the board members followed, leaving Marcus alone at the head of the empty conference room table. In the elevator, Richard cleared his throat. That was difficult. I'm sorry you had to do that to family. He's still my brother, I said. But the company's survival is more important than his ego. What will you do now? Catch a flight to Tokyo. I have another investment opportunity to evaluate. A robotics firm that actually has a viable business model. And your family? I thought about that. I'll tell them the truth eventually. When I'm ready. When they're ready to hear it. The elevator doors opened onto the lobby. Through the glass walls I could see the city waking up. Coffee shops opening, people walking dogs, the Sunday morning rhythm of Manhattan. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, I hate you. I replied, you're angry. I understand. But you'll be okay. Another buzz. Everyone will know you destroyed me. Everyone will know I saved a company you were driving into the ground. There's a difference. A longer pause. Then, Mom and Dad will never forgive you. I typed. Probably not. But I didn't do this for their approval. I silenced my phone and walked out into the October morning. Behind me, 23 floors up, my brother was probably still standing in that conference room, trying to understand how his clueless little sister had outplayed him so completely. The thing about being underestimated is that people never see you coming. And by the time they do, it's already too late.